Hello, everyone. I'm Anda. Thank you so much for joining us today on this webinar for Change Enablement with CoreALM Connector for SAP Solution Manager and ServiceNow integration. We will begin with Donik as our presenter today. And throughout the webinar, if you have any questions, please go ahead and use the Q&A functionality, and then we will go ahead and answer all of the questions at the end of the session. I will begin by introducing Steve Oken, who will go over a quick introduction. Steve, I'll hand it over to you.
Hello, and thanks everyone for joining us today. We have an exciting action-packed agenda for you today. I'll just very quickly introduce CoreALM in case you're not familiar with us. CoreALM's been around for about 13 years. It was started by our CEO and founder, Labanat Batucci. Labanat used to be the ALM practice leader at SAP, used to work for SAP, leading that practice, and made a decision about 13 years ago that he was going to go off and start CoreALM to provide services to customers in the application lifecycle management space, focused on SAP customers. With referrals from his prior SAP contacts, ended up serving, as you can see from the small selection of logos at the bottom of the page, some of SAP's biggest customers, which we continue to serve to this day. About 2018, I think it was, there was a shift that we recognized that a lot of customers don't just have very large enterprises, don't just have SAP as their application. They also have other ALM tools that they utilize, such as Jira, Azure DevOps, ServiceNow. And so that's when we recognized the opportunity to start building some integrations with those other standard applications. And that really has helped us to accelerate into the ALM space, providing best practice solutions across the board. So I'll talk a little bit about the benefits. Everybody is going to have an opportunity to see some of our products in action today. Some benefits of if you're using our ALM best practices as well as some of our tools, what you can expect is that you're going to be able to make changes to your SAP applications better, faster, and cheaper. Better really means that the changes that you're going to introduce will meet the needs of your business with fewer defects. Faster is really because we introduce automations and eliminate a lot of the manual duplication of effort. And cheaper because you're going to be more clear about what changes are required up front. So generally your changes are going to require less rework, and we can help you to accomplish those changes in a shorter period of time, thanks to some of the automation, and that reduces the overall effort and cost to make those changes. Okay, in terms of our products, I'll just briefly cover our products across the board. We've traditionally supported the on-premise environment with SAP Solution Manager, connecting those to Jira, Azure DevOps, and ServiceNow, both for implementation as well as for operations. We also have an Agile Scrum board that is available that allows you to visualize kind of where you are on your projects at any point in time. That includes a free tier now on the Solution Manager side. With the introduction of Cloud ALM by SAP, they are focused a lot on the development of Cloud ALM. We have now introduced connectors for Jira, Azure DevOps, and ServiceNow, covering a lot of those capabilities as well. And our Cloud ALM Scrum board is available as well on that platform. Okay, so if you're interested in any of these products, don't hesitate to ask. We're going to be focusing today on the ServiceNow integration. I'm going to introduce you to our presenter in that space, solution architect, Donik, who's going to walk you through how you can use ServiceNow to manage your operational processes, both for change management as well as incident management. Donik, take it away.
Thank you very much, Steve and Anda. Can you just confirm that you can see my screen and you can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, as Steve alluded to, so the focus for today's session is going to be around the connector for ServiceNow and Solution Manager, and specifically for the alerting and Solution Manager charm. So in line with doing things faster, better, and cheaper, many of our customers where we implemented Charm also use ServiceNow. And throughout the process, we have noticed that many customers use ServiceNow for enterprise-wide changes, Charm basically for SAP changes, or mostly for SAP changes, and there was no connectivity between the two tools. So that's where the synergy was born for us to develop the connector, which it's called the ServiceNow Connector. And what it will enable us to do is to be able to capture data in one system and have that data replicated into the change management system. And then the change management system will obviously be able to transport changes, and you'll be able to take advantage of all the capabilities within a Charm. But what we wanted to do is connect the two tools so we don't end up maintaining the records in two different systems, synchronizing the statuses. So that's where the idea was born, and the ServiceNow connector was developed. From different change types, as you're probably familiar, in ServiceNow, we do have different change types, as well as in Charm, things like normal change, emergency change, and standard change. By design, they are different because they serve different purpose. Therefore, their workflow is different, and all the steps in between are differ from one another. So to make those possible, our tool is very flexible and able to essentially connect any change type to any change type from one system to another. As we'll see later on in the demo today, is that all of these changes are, or all of these elements that are available on both sides are dynamically populated in our connectors. So, for example, if we deploy connector in your environment and you happen to have customized the ServiceNow change types and the workflow within each change type, either in ServiceNow or in Charm, our tool is able to dynamically fetch all the data, the current status of the systems, and we will be able to map those. As we dive into it today, we're going to be able to demonstrate those where you can see the changes, the custom changes that are visible. One of the, this is just a high-level example in terms of statuses. Across the top, we have the ServiceNow statuses that are out of the box. On the bottom is the Solution Manager statuses as delivered by SAP. Obviously, in your environment, things might be different, but at least for today's demo, we're going to focus on standard SAP. But as mentioned before, whether your solution is customized or not, the connector will work with both environments. As you can see here, the difference between different types of changes. For example, the emergency change will bypass some of the steps because its nature is more urgent. Therefore, usually you deploy the change, you fix it, and then post-incident or after the change has been fixed, then you do the root cause analysis. Whereas the standard change will skip some more statuses because standard changes, we are aware of what's changing. Those are essentially pre-approved changes. So any of the authorization steps are bypassed. And the normal change obviously will go through all the changes, or through all the statuses. Similar to ServiceNow, the same thing happens in Charm as well, where some specific statuses are bypassed depending on the change type. And this is just to show you the difference between the two. And then today, what we're mainly going to focus on is on the emergency change, because we're going to have a demo. We're going to do a demo of the system, and we want to use the emergency change just so we don't, so we can fit everything in within the webinar or the planned time for today's session. What we're displaying here is really a normal change, and what we're showing here is an integrated end-to-end process. So if you think about it now, you have a process in ServiceNow and you have a process in Charm. Essentially, those are two separate processes that could run independent of one another. However, with the introduction of the connector, what we can do, it's not mandatory that we do it, but definitely we can build the end-to-end process, meaning a process would begin, in this case, in ServiceNow. After certain actions or fields are completed, and then we hand over the process to Charm. where the charm document is created. We go through its life cycle in development to be tested, and then in a specific status, we can choose to go ahead and advance the ServiceNow status and then hand over the activities to ServiceNow. So as you can see, it begins in ServiceNow, then the next few steps happen in charm. Once charm is successfully, or at least the changes in charm are developed and tested, only then do we want to advance the ServiceNow change document to assess or to authorize, where all the approvals, all the documentation will be reviewed, all the approvals, and then will be provided. Then the change will be scheduled. And then once we decide to implement it, whenever the time, whether it's on weekly basis, and you could bundle your changes, however your methodology is, we will not dictate any of those to be changed. Then we can choose to advance the change document in charm, where the basis team or the technical teams can actually import the change into production, and then those changes are reflected in the ServiceNow change request. What's important also to note is that for every step that charm advances, so for example, going to create it to in development to be tested, any of these statuses are also going to be reflected in ServiceNow. So if you run any reporting, or for example, from auditing perspective, or any of the reporting, any of the management dashboards that you have built for enterprise-wide, you can also see the status of the change document, so you know how close you are for a change to be ready. Some of it might be just created, but if it's almost successfully tested, you can kind of gauge how much longer it's going to take before that change is ready. So all of those details are going to be available in ServiceNow as well. And this is just one workflow. It's just a sample workflow. The other very nice feature of our product is that the status mapping is dynamic. So during design sessions, for example, we can choose to say that only after I authorize a change in ServiceNow, only then do I want to begin to implement the change in charm. And we can easily do that and just by essentially mapping the authorized to created. This is very nice because we have flexibility to map any status to any status. Technically, we can map all of them. Logically, sometimes it doesn't make sense to map certain statuses. However, we have the capability to do so. Another feature that we worked on, and this came as a result of many of our customers asking for this, was to have a leading system or capability for either system to be a leading system. So we have scenarios where a change begins in ServiceNow, and then it's replicated in charm. And that's the scenario that we described in the previous diagram. However, we've also have scenarios where changes will begin in charm. They are developed, tested, and sometimes this development and testing takes months. And customers do not want to see those change requests in ServiceNow unless they are ready to be deployed. Some reasons might be SLAs, and because you don't want tickets just hanging out for months at a time. However, we have that capability, or we can begin a change in charm, and once a specific status is reached, only then we trigger the ServiceNow incident, or the change document. And only at that time we obtain approvals in ServiceNow and we deploy it, for example, to production in charm. So at a high level, just remember that either system can be a leading system, and statuses we can map just any status to any status, and in addition to that, we can map individual fields. And we'll talk about that a little bit more here in the next few slides. When looking at from mapping of the fields, by default, we map 4 fields that are mandatory, if you will. However, we can map any field that's available in ServiceNow to any field in charm, provided that the data type matches. So for example, we're going to map a text to a text field, date to a date field, but we wouldn't map a currency field to a date field, because otherwise it would fail technically. But any field where the data type matches, we can pass those in either direction. that's another feature, and that usually all of these details are discussed and defined during the discovery sessions or design sessions. When a change is created in ServiceNow and then the corresponding charm document is created, what we're displaying here is the data that's visible in ServiceNow. For many customers, the system of record is going to be ServiceNow because it's enterprise-wide for SAP and non-SAP changes. Therefore, what we have done with the tool is that any element, or at least 4 major areas in Solution Manager, when those are populated, for example, if we add a transport to a change document, we're going to display that information in ServiceNow. If you use test suite and test management capabilities in Solution Manager, and you, for example, attach test cases or test plan to a change document, we are going to display the related test information in ServiceNow. In addition to that, any solution documentation, document nodes or process nodes that are added to the change document, we're going to display those in ServiceNow as well. And last but not least, we're going to also display the attachments. So if you attach test results or whatever is attached to the change document, we're going to display those in ServiceNow. And this is dynamic. So if, in case you were to delete the attachment, this assignment block or this display block will disappear altogether from ServiceNow. So it's very dynamic. And we're going to see all this in the demo today as we go through the entire process. So the first portion that we discussed was really more on the relationship between ServiceNow and the charm change document. However, we also mentioned that we have another capability, and the 2 tools can be deployed independent of one another, or the capabilities, but very often we see these go hand in hand because you might have an alert that's raised, which will require a change to fix that issue or that alert. So that therefore these 2 capabilities relate quite a bit. The idea here is that if you use Solution Manager, technical monitoring, system monitoring, user experience integration, job monitoring, HANA and BI, so essentially any monitoring that you use in Solution Manager, and if any of these monitoring triggers or generates an alert, it does not mean that we configure ITSM incidents or any of those things. As long as we just generate an alert based on a threshold that's been breached, then we can take that alert and create an incident in ServiceNow that is related to that alert in Solman. And the alerts could be any of the systems, or it could be SAP, non-SAP, it's just whatever you use to monitor, whatever you use Solman to monitor, or for monitoring, you can raise alerts for any of those systems. This is just a sample workflow. For example, we have an alert in Solution Manager is created. Automatically, we can choose to create an incident in ServiceNow, at which point we can choose to cancel it, which will confirm the alert in ServiceNow, in Solution Manager. And in case the issue is not fixed or remediated yet, as a result, we're going to get a new alert, and then the workflow will be triggered again. However, if we choose to put the incident in progress, and then we work on the providing a solution of fixing the issue, and then once the issue is marked as resolved in ServiceNow, then that will confirm the alert. And we also have an option to mark the incident as resolved, and we can map the result to confirm the alert, or we can map the closure to confirm it, because often customers will have an issue in progress, they will mark it as resolved, and then will wait to verify if the issue has truly been resolved, and only then they will close the incident. And again, what we're trying to depict here and show is the flexibility within the tool to be able to map statuses dynamically. As customers, before that, the field mapping. So similar to Charm, we have field mapping in the alerting space as well. We have items like the caller, for example, who initiated this incident. So we'll be able to tell by SAP integration. It's not an incident that was created by an individual, but rather in an automated fashion from the system. We're going to get the description of the alert, this is going to come from SAP. And then we're going to get a long description. And it's important to know that this description is delivered by SAP. So as these descriptions are enhanced or changed, the language, the technology changes, all of these are going to be updated as well. So as you upgrade the Solution Manager system, the descriptions, the text will match the current technology. It's not an item that has to be manually maintained. So it's just done through the upgrade. And in here, just like in Solution Manager, you will see a lot of details about what the incident is related to. You'll see metrics depending on the alert type. You're going to see more or less data. You're going to see, for example, if a file system is full or a disk is full, you're going to see the percentages, how much free space you have. So you, without even logging into Solution Manager, you're going to get some of this information at the high level to where you'll know exactly what to do, and you'll be able to start addressing the issues sooner rather than later. Then we have the priority, and we can talk about this priority in the next slide with some of the more advanced features that we have. But we have the priority and then the assignment group. These two items are very important because in this case we have an incident assigned to the SAP support group. But as customers deployed the solution and they used it more and more, we saw the need to develop a little bit more intelligence in the tool rather than just one-to-one mapping to say this alert was raised and just copy the data. So what we have done is we have developed some of the advanced filters and routing. So with this application, what you will be able to do is set up different rules. And rules are going to be how you're going to handle an alert. For example, we have a situation where a database might be down, which is going to impact the central instance and all the app servers. In this case, let's say there are 5 app servers. What typically will happen in Solution Manager, you'll get an alert that the database is down, and then often you'll get an alert that app server number 1 is not responding because it cannot connect to the database. And then as an end result, you'll get an alert for the database being down, central instance being down, and then each app server. As a result, you might get 7 alerts, which creates a lot of noise. And when things are not going right, any noise, it's really distracting. So what we have done here is given the customer the capability to rate the importance of each node. So for example, database would be a very important node. So in case the database goes down or it's not available, this rule will allow you to say that if database is down, I know that all the related elements, app servers, central instance, all of those are going to most likely not be functional. Therefore, what we want to do is we want to be able to suppress the alerts and only generate one alert to say that the database is down, the most important element is down. And then all the children will be grouped into the same alert. So you only get one incident. And then once the database is resolved, hopefully everything else is resolved. But if you do have a problem with the app server at this point, a specific app server, then a specific alert for that app server will be raised as a completely separate incident. So with that description, what I tried to do is just show you that we can suppress the alerts to avoid the extra noise, so you can be more agile, and you can fix the problem with better precision and without a lot of distraction. Another very useful feature in here is that we can perform calculations, and depending on the category of the alert, we can choose to map it to where we push it to a specific team. In this case, if the database is down, maybe we want to send it to the HANA team, Oracle team, or maybe just the database team. If it's operating system related, we can dispatch that in different teams' queues, or we can choose to keep all the incidents in one place, and then an individual will dispatch or will push the tickets to the appropriate teams. or we could just configure it here. So there are a lot of tools, and this can get pretty complex as to the way we want to set up these rules, but this is a very nice feature and that a lot of customers find very useful. Okay. Without further ado, we've reached the point where we're going to jump into the live demonstration. So just give me a second. Okay. I'm going to launch ServiceNow. Let me just log in because I'm sure all the sessions have expired. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to create a change request in ServiceNow, and we're going to go through the entire workflow to show you how the change you can start from ServiceNow and how the two tools collaborate with one another, pass information to one another, and impact each other's statuses. We're also going to talk about features as we go, things that would protect us from ourselves, from making a mistake ourselves by trying to advance the status when we're not supposed to. We also have those locks in place, and then other features as we go along. So the connector itself, you can download the connector from the ServiceNow store, and then on the SAP side, we would provide, we would deliver the solution to you via transport. But essentially, you're going to get the configuration application, and we try to simplify this and make it very easy to deploy. And very often, it is very easy to deploy. And we have essentially 3 steps. One is the checklist of items that need to be done. Just importing certain settings, certificates, establishing the users, the connection, or the second step is the connection between the systems, just all the middleware, any of the technical information that are needed, users, passwords, usernames, and all those. And then last but not least, this is the important section, is the change mapping. If you recall earlier, I had mentioned that what we can do is we can map any change type to any change type. So for example, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to load this page and say, okay, in ServiceNow, we have 3 change types. Our ServiceNow is not customized, and we only have 3 change types that are ServiceNow delivers. However, in Charm, we have many custom transactions, and you'll see here, these are all different change types. You can see we have the standard SAP, and as we scroll down, we're going to see the Z object and the Y. So these are all custom change types. And just wanted to demonstrate that it's very easy for us to go ahead and map any of the change types that you are available in your system. In addition to that, once we select a particular change type, once we go into it, we have the status mapping area where we map statuses. For example, we say when ServiceNow is in status new, once we hit save, we're going to initiate the creation of Charm document, and it's going to be in status created. And we're going to lock ServiceNow because in this scenario, once we create the change in ServiceNow, we don't want to be able to make any changes in ServiceNow because Charm has the token, if you will. Charm is going to go through its life cycle until the point of successfully tested, which will then advance ServiceNow, and then we'll change the lock to Charm because now we don't want anybody to be able to modify Charm because it would be an out of order change. So as you can see, this is pretty straightforward. And again, all these statuses, if we had customized our Charm, we would see the statuses coming in directly from that change type that we mapped to earlier. But we're using standard SAP, so that's why everything appears to be standard. In addition to the status mapping, we've made it pretty easy to also map the fields. As we described, we can choose the direction. We can have bidirectional, so you can make a change in either system on a specific field, and both systems would be updated. But often audit dictates which system is going to be the system of record, and this is another. And the tool was built with that in mind to help you as a customer to satisfy all your audit requirements and have the audit team look at one system and have logs all in one system of everything that has happened, instead of having them get access to SAP and I can see the attachment, I cannot. So that was the goal here, that everything is presented in one place. Okay, so the reason I want to show you this is because we're going to refer to this status mapping here as we go through the process. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start creating a change. And I'm going to create an emergency change because it has a shorter workflow, so we don't spend as much time on these. So what we're going to do is we're going to provide a short description. And then we're gonna provide a long description, because in Solution Manager as well, they are two separate fields. And one thing to note here is that this is standard ServiceNow. When we deploy the connector, it's important to know that we're not going to force any drastic changes on your workflow. We're going to adapt and be able to mesh into your existing process, into your existing changes. So for example, if you have a non-SAP change, nothing will change. So this, what we're doing is we're introducing a field to just say, is it an SAP change, yes or no? By default, we usually set it to no. So everyone can continue to make changes as they did. However, if you have a change that specifically relates to SAP, then you would flip the switch to yes. And if you'll notice here, a new tab will appear. So I'll just toggle that just so we can all see that the SAP Charm Details tab appears. Oh, in addition to that, we're also making the assignment group mandatory in this case. It doesn't have to be, but in our scenario, we have it to where you can assign it to a specific team. Then all the other fields, planning, schedule, conflict, all of these remain the same. We do not change, we do not require any of these items to be modified. So whatever you have currently in place, all that will continue to exist as is. However, on this tab, this is where we're going to have to provide some details to Charm. In this case, we're going to provide the change cycle. And as you know, the change cycle contains the information about the systems that are within that cycle. So for example, you could have ECC, S4, and BW in the same, or you could have just one system. And in addition to that, all of these change cycles are dynamically populated in ServiceNow as you create them or you retire them in Solution Manager. So as you create new cycles, you don't have to do anything special as far as, oh, I need to configure this in ServiceNow. It's all automated, and it will be available the moment you activate it in Charm. It'll be available in ServiceNow for end users to use. In this case, we created a change. We picked a change cycle which has a target system, and at this point, we are ready to go ahead and submit this change. If I click submit, it's going to take me out of this change document. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the feature save here, so we stay on the screen, and so I don't have to keep searching for the ticket. But essentially, what's going to happen now by clicking on the create or in status new, if we look at the mapping, we said that when we are in status new, when we filled out all the required fields, communication is triggered from ServiceNow to Charm, and it's going to create a change document in Charm, and it's going to have status created. So we're going to come back, and we're just going to reload the form, essentially refreshing the screen. And we're just going to wait a second. Please keep in mind these are demo systems, and there's many other resources working and tweaking things. So the system could be slow, but in the real world, we get much faster response. All right, perfect. Okay, so we have a scenario today where we can showcase one of our capabilities. If you notice here, is we've been having intermittent network issues. So as a result, this change, and I'm glad it happened now, this change failed to create in SAP. And what we're going to see here, we see the message that it failed to create. But also what we see is a link to an application that we have built, which will allow us to retry Charm creation. Because in the normal world, right, you could have network connectivity lost. There's all sorts of technical issues that could happen. And we don't want you to end up in a dead-end street, but we give you capabilities to be able to retry the Charm creation. And this gives us an opportunity to showcase some of these capabilities. So as soon as we hit the retry charm, the communication is triggered back to SAP. And as a result now, what you will see is that the charm document or charm ID has been populated. What we see here is we see the charm ID document or the charm CD. We see the change cycle, the system, and then the state. This is the status of the charm document, which is it created. This is a clickable link, so if we click on it, it'll take us to Solution Manager, and it'll take us directly into the change that was created as a result. So we don't have to search for it; it'll directly launch and take us into that change. As you can see here, this is urgent change. That's the change number. The very first thing I want to get your attention to, we see that's in status created. We have the ID, we have the description, if you recall. This is the short description. Then if I scroll down, there's another area here that we have the long description. If you recall, I had typed this as well. So if you have a longer description of changes, that will be part of this text log as well. So either system that you're going to look at, you're going to see the same information. In addition to that, we have the ServiceNow integration area where we've added a couple of fields. One is the change request active, yes, and then the change request ID. So this is your ServiceNow ID, 34820, which you can notice here. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to quickly advance. So our goal is to get to charm to status successfully tested so we can see the ServiceNow that's going to be advanced. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to perform a couple of steps. So we looked at this text. I'm going to create a transport and I'm going to attach a document. If you recall earlier, we mentioned that we do pass on different information. I don't have a test plan ready, but we can demonstrate that by attaching a file. And then we're also, and again, this is standard charm. In this case, advancing the status from created to in development. This is all standard SAP. And once we hit save, this document is going to go to in development. But before we do that, we're going to get a pop-up screen where we're going to choose which to create the transports. In this case, I'm going to create a customizing transport. I'm going to click create. And as a result, we're going to see the attachment and the transport number ending in 0039. So this is a customizing transport that's in SAP. Once I launch my S1D system, I refresh, and under my username, I will see a new transport that was created, 10039. And let's pretend I made a change. I hit save. I saved it on this transport, and then I release the task, which is all standard charm that you probably execute today. You release the task, and then we go into charm and advance the status to pass the urgent change to test. If we go back to the workflow, we take a look. When we are in pass to test, nothing should happen in ServiceNow in terms of status changes because we haven't reached the successfully tested status. So we are on to be tested. And the next step is going to be that we're going to advance and say this change has been successfully tested. So as soon as I hit save, the transport release is going to be initiated. And the transport was released, it disappeared from the screen. And let me see, okay, let's try that again. Charm, okay, let's confirm the successful test. Looks like an import was still running in the background. Okay, we're now in status successfully tested. If you recall, successfully tested in charm should mean that the ServiceNow status should now be advanced to authorized. I go in ServiceNow and I reload the form. And in addition to the status that's been changed to authorized, we can see that now. We look at the notes section in ServiceNow. This is from an audit perspective. We can see that SAP integration initiated the status change to authorized from new and updated from SAP charm. So we can see those details. But what's important is that in ServiceNow, we can see the SAP Charm document, the ID, the status, the current status, which is successfully tested. We can see the transport management details, so the transport number, the description, what type it is, everything that we see in Charm as well, the owner and the status of the transport. In addition to that, we see the attachment that was attached on the Charm change document. So all these elements will be displayed here as part of Charm, or as a Charm details tab in ServiceNow. As you probably are thinking about it, you can essentially write any report that you want in ServiceNow and be able to collect these data so you can display, different combinations of this, because all these are residing in a table in ServiceNow. Okay, so according to the workflow, so far so good. We're on state authorized. Next, we're gonna have to put the ServiceNow in status implement, which will trigger Charm to be in status authorized for production. But before we do that, this is standard workflow. It says change is waiting for approval. So we must go to the approvers tab, and this standard ServiceNow, you could have one or more, you could have cascading, parallel approvers, or in serial. Those rules do not matter at all, or at least, so whatever you have currently in place, none of that has to be adjusted to enable this tool. But in our scenario, we only have one approver, and once we approve, the status has moved to scheduling, or the status scheduled, and then we are ready to implement the change. The next step would be for us to hit implement or set the status to implement. But before I save, going back to the status here, is implement is going to advance Charm to authorize for production. Now, if your Charm is configured to say, to send an email to the basis team, for example, to say, hey, you have a change that's authorized for production. So as soon as you make the change in ServiceNow, you could either have ServiceNow notify the developer that it's there, or the basis team that it's their turn, or Charm can. So it does not really matter. It just depends on what your configuration is. But going back to Charm, we're going to set it to status implement. We're going to hit save. And this should move the status to implement, and it should, once we go to Charm, once I hit edit, we should see that it's authorized for production. Edit, this will update the status. Yes, it's authorized for production. Whenever the deployment time comes, the basis team will go in, will import the change to production. Again, any cross-system object login, cross-reference checks, any of the transport checks that you have configured in Charm, all those will still be active, and none of those are bypassed by introducing this process. We're just introducing the connectivity between the two and a little bit of control to not allow you to advance one tool or the other if you're not supposed to. And essentially, the change is imported in production, and automatically imported into production will push ServiceNow to status review. If I reload the form, we should see ServiceNow in status review. And for many customers, we have to put in the closure information for that specific change, either test results or just to say, yes, the change is successful. That's okay. And then we choose to close the incident or the change request. And this should trigger communication back to SAP and should put it in, at least for the status now, the way we have it, should put it in status confirm. We can choose in the connector, we have it set to status confirm, because maybe we want to perform an extra step in Charm, or if we had decided at that time, we could say, instead of confirm, we're just going to set it to completed, which is a final status. And you cannot make any further changes once you put it into completed. And when you refer to the logs, you'll see that the changes were made by the tool rather than individuals. So that typically suffices all the audit requirements. So in this scenario, we wanted to show you the end-to-end happy path, if you will. We saw a little bit of issues along the way, and I'm glad we did because we were able to demonstrate that capability. But in addition to that, we have many other, if you had noticed earlier, we have many other capabilities such as coupling existing changes, coupling new charm requests. We can do one-to-many requests, mapping one charm and one ServiceNow request to many charm documents. We have a lot of flexibility. As this product we've been developing for a few years and collaboration with different customers, there are a lot of features that I didn't cover today. I wouldn't be able to cover because there are so many. But in essence, we wanted to demonstrate this capability. And at this time, what I would like to do is go back to see if we have any questions. Hopefully, you have some questions, and on that, or Steve, if you could let us know if there are any questions.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Donik. We do have a few questions that came through the chat here. The first one would be, how long does this integration take to implement?
Okay. Integration to be implemented, I mean, we've done it as quickly as a couple of weeks. It's just going to depend a little bit on the design session, how long those will take as far as what the workflow looks like. But typically for technically implementing it, it's not a very long process. Usually it's the network team that has to make the connectivity work. But from deploying the tool, it's not a very long process. It's not like we're talking a 6-month project for deploying this connector. Hopefully that is helpful.
Okay, thank you. The next question is there any middleware or separate infrastructure required for CoreALM Connector?
Okay, so there is no middleware required from CoreALM in terms of you need to use a CoreALM service. You could have a direct connection between two systems. However, we are aware that nobody likes to expose the systems directly to the internet. So in that case, for communication from ServiceNow to Solution Manager, ServiceNow provides an application called MidServer, which would reside in customer's environment, which builds a tunnel between the MidServer and ServiceNow. And then through that MidServer, the SAP system can be reached. So it's like a proxy. And then for communication from Solution Manager to ServiceNow, ServiceNow being in the cloud, you could either have a direct connection from a Solution Manager to ServiceNow, or you could use some reverse proxy to enable that. However, the communication in both directions is going to be encrypted and protected. So there's no clear text information going through the internet. Hopefully that provides a little bit more detail into infrastructure.
Okay. And it looks like we have one more question. How does this connector help with SOX compliance?
SOX compliance. So it's gonna help in terms of keeping the data the same in both systems, adding the governance to say that you're not going to be able to execute steps that are not part of the design process. So if the compliance team would review the process, and once it's logged down, we would not allow anybody to deviate from that process. So we're improving the data transfer, the data matching between two systems, and then the steps that are executed are going to be as designed in the process. So long that the process is SOX compliance, we can enforce the tool to adhere to that process. And last but not least, as most organizations would like to have one system of record, in this case, we would force one system to be the system of record, and very often ServiceNow is that system of record that has all the changes in every step, everything that has happened in between. at least these are the high-level benefits that I can think of, but I'm sure there are many more that we can discuss, or if you have specific requirements, we can discuss those and see how we can address those.
Okay, thank you so much, Janik. It looks like that's all we have for the questions. If anyone has any questions later on, feel free to send us an email at info@corealm.com, and we'll be happy to reach out to you with the answers. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you.